Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 53 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. So I had such a great time talking with Jason Stout of Outward Bound USA for this episode. I actually met Jason last June at Snowbird, Utah at the National Alliance for Grieving Children Symposium. And I knew I wanted to have him on the show. I think Outward Bound is such a unique program, basically using the outdoors to inspire personal growth. We talked about a lot of topics on this show. We talked about, first of all, how he himself lost his father when he was 14, as well as his sister and his grandmother at young ages. And when he was 30, he did a 78-day Outward Bound course, which kind of got him started on this journey. And he's been there ever since, leading lots of expeditions and ultimately getting this special Outward Bound for Grieving Teens program started. We talked about Outward Bound overall and how and when and why it got started, the types of other programs they have. They have some very long programs, one called a gap year or a semester program. They also have very short programs. They have programs in multiple locations in the United States. And I will also link to Outward Bound International, which has programs in other countries besides the United States. So we talked all about that, including some really heartwarming stories from the trail from some of the expeditions that he's led with some of the grieving teens in the program. So I hope you enjoy my discussion with Jason Stout. My guest today is Jason Stout, who is joining us from national headquarters of Outward Bound USA in Golden, Colorado. And Jason is the National Outreach Director for Outward Bound USA. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jenny.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy to be talking with you today. It was great to meet you down in Utah and this summer at the National Alliance for Grieving Children Conference. So I'm really glad that we're able to work it out to have you on the show. And I'm really excited to hear all about Outward Bound and the programs and share that with my listeners. So again, thank you for being here.
That's great. My pleasure. Wasn't that a great conference, though? That was great and an amazing setting.
Yes, although I have to say, I had a lot of trouble. You probably didn't have this because you're high in the mountains probably anyway in Denver or Golden. But I had trouble with the altitude.
I mean, I think a lot of people did. And I was okay, but I think a lot of people did. That's what I heard. So we're going to be in Phoenix this next year. We won't have that problem.
Like sea level,
we're dealing with 120 degrees.
Of course, the hotel, will have air conditioning, so that'll be nice. All right, well, let's just jump right in here and talk about this. But let's start first, if you don't mind. I'd love to know how you got involved in this line of work.
Well, I've been working for Outward Bound and in this line of works for almost 19 years this March. Okay. And I was there was a time in my 20s that I was really getting into exploring the outdoors, and I went to guide school for rafting down in Durango, Colorado, and that was amazing. Did a 2.5 month trip with my brothers in honor of my dad who died when we were kids. We drove up to Alaska.
2.5 month trip
2.5 months.
To Alaska?
Yeah.
Wow.
Out of a van. And we lived out of a van. I built bunk beds. We had a raft. We had climbing gear. My brother was a rock climbing instructor in the Marines before he got out. And we just went exploring, and I was really into getting out in the wilderness. It did something for me. And when I was in my early, I think I was 30, I stumbled on a job at Outward Bound in the office, in the admissions department. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it because of the mission, and from just talking to the alumni of our program who would come back and say, "Oh, this changed my life. It made me who I am." And I was like, "This is where I want to be." Mm-hmm. So I got super involved. I went out. I took. Outward Bound sent me on a 7-day short course down to Mexico, just on the other side of the Texas border, and that was amazing. And at that moment, I'm like, I got to go do this, and I got to really do something big in Outward Bound. So I signed up for one of our 78-day winter semesters.
Wow, 78 days. Wait, that's like almost 3 months.
It was almost 3 months in the winter. Yeah.
In the winter.
Yeah.
Huh. And where were you?
We started in Southern California in Joshua Tree, and that was backpacking and rock climbing. And there was 19 students, and we split them into 2 groups of 10. Outward Bound will always split the groups that size. It's usually 8 to 12 students, and it was college age to adult, like I was. It was what we called a semester outdoor educator course. And so we did backpacking, rock climbing, and Joshua Tree. Then we drove to an airport. We flew to Seattle, your neck of the woods, and then we drove to Mazama, and that's one of our base camps that we still have. And this was coming up January 18th, almost 18 years ago that I did this. And we did avalanche training, a wilderness first responder in the snow.
Wow.
And we did 10-day randonnée skiing in the mountains, ski mountaineering.
Okay.
Lived out in the snow.
Uh-huh.
And then after that section, we drove to Anacortes, Washington, above Seattle, and we sailed for 22 days in a 26-foot open boat.
And this was still wintertime?
It was winter. Yeah, we were sailing, taking off. It had to be March. And we were wearing exposure suits, these big suits that keep us warm. And if, the boat capsizes, you should be able to survive a little longer.
Wow.
But, we sailed out into the Puget Sound up to British Columbia.
Uh-huh.
And we on our boat, there was 9 students and 2 instructors. And they were captains. And we sailed and explored the islands. And we slept on that boat every night for 22 nights.
And it was completely open? No cabin?
No cabin. We had to put at night, we would drop the mast, and then we would set down the oars. We would set up a shelter, like a tent that fit over that mast. And so it was that we were covered, and we'd anchor somewhere like in some kind of cove, so we were protected. And we slept shoulder to shoulder. I slept under the oars. Someone slept in the middle next to me. And 22 days. Wow. Yeah. It was tough.
Uh-huh.
Best thing I ever did. And I was out there because I was why I wanted to do that program. I thought to myself, I'm in a place where I'm not married. I don't have a dog. I really want to do this. I want something challenging. I want to discover a part of myself that I haven't. And I want to do this because of the death losses I had as a kid. And my sister died when I was 4. She had a brain disorder. My grandmother was murdered when I was 7 from someone we knew. And then we found my dad. He died likely from pneumonia when I was 14. He was 43 years old and just struggled through that. So here I am going, you know what, this is my path. And I'm going to do this. And I'm glad I did. It was a game changer for me.
Yeah. And you were about 30 at that point, you said?
I was 30 or 31. And that's older. That's not traditional, but it was an outdoor educator program. And that is, we still do those programs that are about 50 to 65 days. And they go, when I got done, when we finished, I was like, I'm never doing this again. and within a couple of weeks, I was signing up to intern in Montana as an instructor, as field staff.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, for the next adventure.
And then I think that didn't this then lead, your experience with this directly led into the development of the program specifically for grieving teens that Outward Bound now has?
Well, that's when I started thinking about, this is wonderful for grief, and just thinking about this. I studied exercise science, but I'm out there thinking about, the psychology behind this, and the connect, like the eco-psychology and the physical challenge and how that was impacting me, and the connections that were being established. I thought this would be great for grief. But I wasn't really serious at that point. I thought I had to go out and have more experiences in the field as a staff member. So I interned in Montana. Then the next summer I worked in New Hampshire and instructed a program we have called Intercept. And the Intercept is a special Outward Bound program for struggling teenagers. So for high school teens, 28 days, where it's different because you're working with the students, the parents are sending them. It's an intervention. The kids are they're experimenting with things. They're not in that much trouble, but it's to intercept them before that. And so we would have a parent conference at the end. And sitting out there, my mentor, a guy named Phil Bailey, we'd sit and talk about it and just started dreaming up this program. Every morning, waking up at 4:30, about an hour and a half before we woke up the kids, drinking coffee and just dreaming. Yeah.
Wow. So I feel like we should go back briefly because I do want to get more into the Grieving Teens program, but I realized we skipped over what is Outward Bound.
You're right. Well, okay, Outward Bound is a wilderness program that inspires personal growth. We're a nonprofit. There's Outward Bound started in 1941. It was a product of World War II. A German educator who was exiled by Hitler. And he relocated to Wales, took over a boarding school there. His name's Kurt Hahn. And he was really into character education. He designed a program for sailors who were working in these British shipping lines during World War II, who were getting torpedoed by German U-boats, and then these ships would sink, and the young sailors were dying. The older sailors were surviving. And the idea was that these young sailors didn't have the training that they needed. They needed more life experience. They needed to discover their resilience. So he designed, Kurt Hahn, our founder, designed a 1-month fitness ocean survival program.
Okay.
At his school in Abercrombie, Wales, they participated in this program, and then they eventually named it Outward Bound. It was Fitness Ocean Survival Rescue and Service.
Okay.
And it was Outward Bound, for those that don't know this term, a lot of people don't, is the nautical term for leaving the safety of harbor.
Okay.
Self-discovery, it's heading out to find out, what am I made of?
Yeah.
Right? And then the whole thought was, if you start at an earlier age and you give a kid experience, so let's say a 16, 17-year-old or a college age students, whatever, and they can go out and really be challenged and discover their inner resources, do a deep dive, get uncomfortable, but develop the mindset of, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable, right? Learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable, which is tied to resilience and confidence. So this program is international. There's Outward Bound programs across the world, but in the United States, we have the most robust program, and we offer these 7 to 85-day wilderness expeditions, starting at age 10, and then going all the way up, like adults do our program. We serve hundreds of veterans a year. We serve kids just from every walk of life in the United States in the areas where we facilitate these programs, right? So we have offices throughout the U.S., but we also have a number of base camps where we basically support these programs.
Gotcha. Okay. And just because I do have quite a number of listeners in other countries, so is there a link to like where you've accessed international programs, or like a worldwide Outward Bound site that I can link to or something? Yeah,
I mean, you could one is you search Outward Bound International.
Okay.
And then it'll give you links to the programs. The programs that were first up and running, that, again, I'll use the word robust, or were New Zealand, incredible program. I haven't been there, but I hear Australia, and then the US. And then there's a lot of others that are excellent too. But nothing really looks like USA, because a lot of the programs might work in group or customized courses, like schools will contract out with Outward Bound, businesses. In the United States, we're serving groups, businesses, and we have what's called open enrollment, where you can look it up and say, hey, I want to send my kids. And as part of that open enrollment menu, there's gap years, right? And there's a program we call Pathfinder. It's a 30-day program for college-age students so that they can discover who they are. And they have a lot more, it's more intention around the conversation of what's next. Okay. And then we have programs like the Grieving Teens program, which is very intentional around grief.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into that one more, the Grieving Teens program. So am I remembering correctly that you were involved in creating this some years back then?
Yeah. So, looking at, I'll just add this too, looking at Outward Bound across the United States, we offer, and I'll talk about that, but backpacking, dog sledding, canoeing, rafting, sailing, sea kayaking, canyoneering, I mean, right now we're talking about dog sledding, about all the new puppies we have up in Minnesota.
Oh, how cute.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
I want to see a picture.
I wish I had one right now, but I can send you one. We can add it. So we have all these different programs and the different challenges, and we have some courses down in Florida that are warmer and like sailing down in the Keys, and then we take that up and we'll be sailing in Maine in the summer. But with this program, the Grieving Teens program, yes, out when I was working in the field, I thought I want to start this program, and because of my grief and death losses that I suffered, and I thought this would be a fantastic program. I also knew that Outward Bound had we get a number of inquiries where people want to sign their kids up for Outward Bound, and someone will say, hey, I know that your son or daughter is really struggling with the death of a parent or a sibling or someone. Outward Bound might be great. I hear it's a great experience. And so I was tuning into that and having wonderful conversations and connecting and like normalizing. Like the dad that's saying my wife died and my son is really struggling. Mm-hmm. And this is back in 2004. I signed him up for a 22-day canoe trip down the Blood Vein River in Canada. And they're going down the river, and he's having these experiences. They do a sweat lodge. They do service projects. He comes out of it. I didn't talk to him after that, but his sister calls, and she's a couple years older, and she says, I want to sign up. She's like, it changed my brother's life.
Wow.
That program. And then I was like tearing up, and like I am now, still, drawing on that. And I was thinking, it would be so cool to do something that's just more intentional, where you have a group of kids that share that same experience. Mm-hmm. Outward Bound has been doing those types of programs for years, but the difference between this program is the curriculum is very intentional around grief and peer support. And but I'm out and I'm thinking about what would this look like? And not being a person that's a therapist, just thinking like, how did I feel then? And how can I connect my imagination with the true experience and of Outward Bound? And so I approached my friends here at Outward Bound, and they were nothing but supportive. They helped me raise the money. I recruited the kids from a program in Denver, Judy's House, which you're familiar with. And got involved in their program.
I had a terrific discussion with Judy's House about their childhood bereavement estimation model and all the good work they're doing. So, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Denver, in Colorado.
There is. And a lot of that, I owe a lot to Judy's House and Brian Greasy for the early support that we had in this program. And then I started working in grief groups there as a facilitator, as a volunteer for middle school and teenagers. And I ended up working for Judy's House. But but just learning from this, what I was looking at is like when I was grieving, the things that helped me as a kid were books. And it was like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the Lord of the Rings, right? Uh-huh. So it was like kids going out into the wilderness, or kids, that's Narnia and Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I thought, I'm going to just tweak Outward Bound a little bit, and we'll do some activities that kind of draw on that. And so that's the difference. This grief program that we run through Outward Bound, it was originally called Heroic Journey. And the reason why was because what I realize is that when we're grieving, I felt beat up on, like something horrible had happened to me. Like I had no power, no control. And I thought, well, Heroic Journey, which is just another way of saying Outward Bound. It's about the hero's journey is about leaving the safety of where you're at and taking a leap of faith and going out and finding that inner strength. So I thought, well, if you're on a hero's journey, then automatically you have to accept that you might be a hero in your own life, right? And so that was the intention of naming it Heroic Journey back in 2005. Now it's Outward Bound Grieving Teens, because we want people just to know, not have to go, what is Heroic Journey? We just want them to say, direct.
Immediately, you know what it is.
Yeah, but that's what it was. And I started the program. I built a curriculum. This is like my guide that I use internally at Outward Bound, the Heroic Journey Guide. And I give this to instructors, train instructors in what's companioning model of grief support, created by Dr. Alan Wolfelt out of Fort Collins, and then very inspired by the Dougie Center and Donna Sherman, who was a leader up there, is a leader in the grief support movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's taking that element and mixing it with Outward Bound,
mm-hmm.
and it makes it fun.
Yeah. Terrific. Well, let's get a little deeper on that then. But I guess first, so who can enroll, who can sign up, who can participate in an Outward Bound Grieving Teen program?
Okay, so Outward Bound Grieving Teens, let me just say, first of all, we are lucky because we are sponsored. This program is sponsored by the New York Life Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
New York Life, and we have other sponsors too, but that is our leadership sponsor, and they've given us about $1 million of support in the last 5 years.
Nice.
That and then with that money, what we do is we serve groups that come in. So like a group like Roberta's House out in Baltimore, you might know them, or
mm-hmm.
the program Good Grief out of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We come out, and what we do is we use our New York Life money to match their fundraising for the most part. So that we're doing it together as a partnership, and then they'll bring out a group of kids. We're also doing this with TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. We've done it with National Fallen Firefighters. We've had Warm Springs, which is, I think it's Warm Springs and the Native American tribe up in the Northwest.
In Oregon, I think.
In Oregon, you're right. Yeah, outside of Bend. That's where one of our base camps is. And and then some programs in Texas, in Houston. There's a charter school where it's 80 to 90% free or reduced lunches. Discover You, and those kids get to go as an intact group up to Minnesota, and they're on this journey together. And we're all grieving, and we're all going to be in these canoes together, and we're all here, right? And then we have what's called open enrollment, and then this might really connect with your listeners. Be more of an opportunity for them. Is it's get on, and you have to be 14 to 17, 18 to. We go back and forth on that one, right?
So kind of like high school age. High
school age. It's a high school program, and they just get online, and they do pay a deposit and $300, and then can apply for a scholarship. So we always ask for some investment because that we know that when we do that, everybody's going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's apply for a scholarship, and you can get partial to full tuition beyond that.
Gotcha.
And if there's someone that's struggling to even come up with a deposit, then all that has to happen is the word gets back to me. They can contact me, and then I try to figure it out.
Sure. Okay. And so how long? So is the program only in Colorado? Are there programs in multiple locations? And how long is the expedition? Well,
so we are running this program, and I'm going to tell you that where we're running it, and then where we run it open enrollment, and what those choices are. Okay, and any listener can go on our website and find this program and find the locations. And so we're running this program. It started in Colorado, and now we run it in California. We run it in California, Oregon, Colorado, of course. We run it in Minnesota. We might be running it in Texas. We're running it outside of Baltimore, outside of Philadelphia, in Maine, and maybe North Carolina in 2020. And so we're running all those different programs. And then for open enrollment, like your choices this year would be Oregon, rafting on the Deschutes River, Colorado, hiking in the Rocky Mountains, and it will be offered in Maine. And I think it's going to be, I got to look, it could be backpacking or sailing. And that's open enrollment this year. Okay. And what we do is we use a lot of, like, the groups programs they're in high demand. So it just kind of takes us that place, because our goal is to reach as many kids who are grieving the death of a loved one.
Sure.
But to offer diverse programs.
Right. Okay. And so for the Colorado open enrollment program, then sounds like you would have kids flying in from around the country.
That's right. So it does cost it does cost a little more, because I add that in, but anyone should let us know. And I will always try to figure something out. And so it is a destination program. Some people are local, and then some people fly in.
So let's say, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, please.
So let's say a kid shows up in Colorado for the program. What can they expect?
I love it. And I used to pick, sometimes I'll meet the students at the airport. I did last year. I used to meet the students at the airport, drive up with them to Leadville, Colorado, and I'll tell you what that looks like. Imagine having 10 kids show up from all over the country. They all are grieving the death of a loved one. most of them, when you meet them, say, I haven't really had someone to talk to about it. The parents like, I just really want, they're sad all the time, or they seem stuck. And now they're meeting at baggage carousel at Denver International Airport.
Mm-hmm. All these other teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah, they're met by our staff who are there. Outward Bound is about resilience, but it's a lot about compassion. So they're there, warm. Hey, what's going on? Nice to meet you. The students collect. We jump in a van. And now they're driving up I-70. And in the backdrop is the Rocky Mountains, snow-capped. They're massive. Right? Yeah. Especially if you're not from a place like this. And it's like, okay, so I'm this person that's been grieving, and now I'm in a van with kids that are also grieving, sharing my experience or something close to it. And now we're driving up to these beautiful mountains, and they're going to feel like a little bit nervous. Who is this group? I'm not connected with them yet. Why this looks so tough and challenging? Will I be able to keep up? And now they're just driving up, and they're talking and they're connecting. Okay. So then they show up, and this is a 7-day program, and they show up at the foot of, it's at our base camp in Leadville, Colorado. It's at roughly around 11,000 feet.
Wow.
And yeah, and here they are, and they're drinking water the whole way up. We're preparing them for that elevation challenge, and they get off the bus, and there we are, and we start with icebreakers. We want to connect them. Our students, we want to connect them, start building that bond right away. Mm-hmm. And when I used to run this, the discussion we would have is, first of all, let's recognize how courageous you all are, that you decided to hop on a plane, fly to Colorado to meet a bunch of people you don't know, to talk about something as sad as grief, to climb mountains, to be cold, be uncomfortable. That's what you decided to do. That means you're resilient, and you should know that you're a resilient person. That's a resilient mindset, to go do that, to take care of yourself. And so we talk about that, and we just kind of tone set. The first thing we do is acknowledge that death loss. Within the first 30 minutes, we try to get in that circle and say, hey, my name is Jason. I'm 48. My dad died of pneumonia when I was 14. And today, I'm on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being great, 1 being horrible. I'm a 7, right? Mm-hmm. And so that right then, we've set a tone. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the activities we're doing on the side of a mountain about grief. Really, it's about that whole 7-day expedition in the wilderness is the container. It is the conversation. Because as the 2 instructors that are running that program, with a course director, either as one of the instructors or outside of there might be 3 or 2, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're walking into the wilderness with these kids, and we are doing some activities that I think we'll be talking about, but they're also having that conversation as they move through.
The kids with each other? Yeah,
they're hiking and they're breathing, and it's somatic, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just like, okay, well, how did your mom die? Oh my gosh, and that's how I felt, right? And they're having this and it might not even be about death loss, but it might be something related to that, right? Mm-hmm. Or just life challenges, with sometimes normal life challenges mixed with grief, that can be overwhelming. So now they're up there and they're breathing fresh air away from anything. And what we say is, when you want to have a transformation in your life, the best way, and sometimes maybe the only way, maybe not the only way, but is to have a novel experience, enriched environment. So just imagine leaving wherever you are and coming out to a place in Colorado on a mountain. Mount Massive is where our base camp is. And now you're like hiking on a mountain, and you're just like breathing in that air, and you're surrounded by pine trees and Mount Massive, huge mountain. And you have these Outward Bound instructors who are skilled at connecting and bringing the participants together and listening to them. And by the way, the whole purpose of an Outward Bound, or how we approach instructing as Outward Bound instructors, we come into each program, whether it's the Grieving Teens program or not, with an unconditional positive regard for our students. And we are there to use the wilderness, not just to teach like how to climb a mountain or set up a shelter or cook food, but we're teaching through that experience. And it is about knowing that anyone in front of us is capable of more than they know, and that we are there to help them find that through a self-discovery process that is inspired by the challenges we can provide in wilderness. To put that challenge in front of them, set them up for success, say, here's your challenge. Now I'm here to cheer you on, like a coach.
Yeah.
Right? And now they're thinking grief because they're there. They did their acknowledgement. They're all, like, this is related to the death of my dad. And I'm climbing this mountain. Now I want to quit, but I'm not going to quit. And how does that relate and align with their experience back home when they're sitting there with this sadness and the grief, the challenge of grief?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like you've really created a program that's got, what am I trying to say? I don't know, all the right elements to really bring out this kind of learning in this outdoor context, as you said, and to kind of, you're not sitting there lecturing at them, you're not sitting there teaching them something, maybe explicitly, but you're using the conditions you've created to help do the teaching.
Right. And when you look at this, so then you have, and this comes up a lot, kids will ask this, and because there's a lot of anxiety to go do something like this. And it's that this is 90% outward bound, 10% grief support, tweaked for that. We're not talking about grief all the time. Like, it's not the outward bound instructors. Let's talk about grief again. Okay. There's moments in there where we're doing specific activities that might take an hour, maybe 2 in a day. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the program is they're learning about themselves, and they're learning how they're going to come out with some wilderness skills. They're going to cook their own food, navigate a bit, set up a shelter, learn how to do lightning drills, learn a lot of those different things, learn how to go to the bathroom in the woods. Right? But then it's also through that experience that's the self-discovery.
Yeah.
I can do this. I'm self-reliant. I can handle myself in the wilderness.
Right.
Well, and this is a lot tougher than home. It really is. The force of a mountain coming down on you, the climbing, and you're exhausted, and you're dealing with everything in your mind. Right? Yeah. That is so related to life at home. It's all about transference for us.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That's terrific. So what, can you give us a couple of examples, like some of the grief activities that you might intersperse throughout that 7-day period? Can you give us a few examples of some things you do in that regard?
Yeah. Like just some of the activities we do. One is that acknowledgement that I told you about, an Acknowledgement Circle. And this is how I lay it out, because basically what I've done is I put this together and then got involved in the grief and loss programs and community, and took some of, just basically from my understanding of what they do, and then how do we tweak it so that outward bound instructors see it and go, oh, that's easy. And outward bound instructors, they get it quickly. They say that, I could just show them something most of the time and say, hey, this is what we're doing. They go, okay, I got it. I know how to tweak it, right? So it would be like acknowledgement. And outward bound, we always check in. When you're running an expedition, you got to check in with the people on that expedition. How is everybody doing? Let's keep close. We can only get through this together. If you're climbing Everest, it's the same thing. Anything, the team has to be united. There can't be exclusive relationships. You got to work together. And so we'll do this check-in every night. How are you tonight? What was your tulip and rose for the day? Or what was your, on a 1 to 10, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Talk about your day, process. So on this program, we start with that acknowledgement, and we start with, I'm Jason, I'm 48. My dad died of pneumonia when I was 14, and today I am a acknowledgement. We do it the first 30 minutes, and then we do it every single night to remind us of why we're there. So important. This program is made up of rituals and ceremonies. That is a ritual. And we'll do something like we'll have what we call the tea ceremony, and that's the first night. And it can be around the system. It gets, some of the timeline gets switched up, but these activities are all pretty much done. And tea ceremony is just after the kids are up there. That first night, we make it easy on them, and we cook the food for them, set up the shelter. We want to bring the stress level down. There's enough stress level, so let's bring it down tonight.
Sure.
And a lot of intention. And so we have your shelter set up. We have your food cooked for you. And now let's have some tea. And you're on a mountain that's probably 40 degrees. And you're getting like, I'm going to be out here. And then we hand out the mugs. And the way I used to do it is, and I used to be in the field for every single one of these. Now I can't. But I make the tea. And usually it was something like sleepy time, like chamomile, celestial seasons. And I would say, and the kids are looking at me, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And I overdo it, dramatize what I'm doing. And they're just super curious. And then we all gather around after we have dinner. This is just probably an hour before we're going to go to bed that first night. And I say, oh, here, this is really special tea, and make up some kind of story about how it relaxes, how this tea will sleep so great tonight, and everything's going to be great. And then I say, does anybody drink tea? I'll ask that, and of course, a few people, I drink tea. Well, why? Well, it helps me relax. Right? So now what we're doing is we're moving into a discussion that seems organic a bit about, we always have in tea or hot cocoa or something on Outward Bound, and about coping. And okay, so maybe you're not drinking tea, but what else do you do? Does everybody want to share what they do to take care of themselves? So, I talk to my friends. I listen to music. I do yoga. I go for a jog, right? So this is a conversation we're probably going to have a couple times. But at that point, they're all in this steaming hot tea, thinking about self-care. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, they go to bed, and it's fun because the Outward Bound instructors who are new to the program will say, Jason, I've never seen teenagers sleep that well night one. But then what it's also a tool for the instructors, because if things come in like bad weather, I mean, in some of these programs it can snow in the summer, and that's great. I want it to. It's a great experience. But then if it's just kind of if you're having a group breakdown, make some tea, and everybody will automatically go right back into I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're acknowledging stepping into our grief, which we have to if we're going to let it go, and then we're talking about self-care. Okay?
Terrific.
Night one.
Yeah, that's great. You have something I think you call the early morning mountain climb?
Yeah.
Or what, can you tell us about that?
It's a peak ascent, and it's so of course we have so many different elements on Outward Bound, like we talked about, like the sailing and the rafting, but there's usually a day where we're going to have a big challenge, right? It's going to be a day that's like the peak of the experience, literally and metaphorically, but
you're building up to that big deal. Yeah,
you have some skills. And of course, a 7-day course, that peak happens on day 3, usually. And it's different than like if you're on a 22, like on our semester course, Rockies to Ecuador, we're climbing a 25,000 foot peak.
Wow.
Right? It's a different story, but that's 50 days into the course.
Sure.
So, but here, like, let's say it's here in Colorado, and we're doing that peak ascent. We have a 14,000 foot peak. We call them 14ers here in Colorado. And we have to wake up early because in the summer, you have to get up on the mountain before the lightning storms come in. So we wake up at 4:00, maybe earlier. Wow. And that's never the best moment for a group. I haven't seen it. Oh my gosh, we're getting up. They're stressed. No one wants to wake up that early on a cold mountain. Yeah. Right. And then get ready to climb a mountain. Yeah. So everything's set up, and so that anxiety bubbles up. And wait a minute. No need to, and that's how I'm talking to the kids. There's no need to, have anxiety about this, because this is going to be a great day. Today is very special because we're going to dedicate this climb up this mountain to our loved one, to our person that died. You can dedicate it to the person that died. You can dedicate it to the person that supports you now. Doesn't matter, both, all the above. Here's some athletic tape handed out. Here's permanent markers, and everybody write down who they're dedicating this day to. And so they take this tape and they're putting it on. They put it on their helmets, and they're putting it on their ski poles. We use a lot of ski poles for walking sticks, and then or they put it on their boots. Okay? And so now you imagine you're about to walk up this mountain, and you have your backpack with some water and some snacks, and here we go. And we climb up this mountain, and it's a powerful moment. I mean, first of all, you start taking each step, right? And each step up this mountain, that's like this sometimes. You want to quit. It's like this, that's a person, if you can see. That's Karis right there.
Well, I can see, but just for listeners, Jason's pointing to this gigantic picture behind him. He's in a conference room, although he looks like he's in the mountains because he's got a gigantic picture of these huge mountain peaks behind him. Right.
This is Washington, by the way. This is your neck of the woods.
Cool.
Yeah. So now we're walking up this mountain, and what you're doing is like every step you want to quit, like running a race, and but now it's in your head, and it's in my head and it's in the kid's head. So they've told me that I'm not stopping. Right? It's different than a normal Outward Bound program, because sometimes you're dealing with a lot more like, I don't want to do this. There's no reason for me to do it. I want to do it. You have 10 people wanting to do different things.
Yeah.
But this is like, this is for my mom. This is for my dad. This is for my sister. I'm not stopping. I'm going. And every step you take, now you have to realize this. This is what they realize, participants. What I realized is that every step I take, I feel closer to my loved one. That when you dedicate something like that, where you really are giving something of yourself, then you are connecting with that person that is not there. That you have a realization that if you're going to do this and dedicate it to someone, you're giving them a gift, and that means that they exist in some way. Right? They're not totally gone. And so then we're hiking up this mountain. I have experienced so many great stories of personal triumph, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it. This is so tough. I'm not going to make it. But it's for your mom. Let's go. And here we go. And this takes hours. It could take 8 hours of wanting to quit.
Starting at 4 a.m.
Starting at 4 a.m. Hey, I know we all want to quit, but we're not quitting. And just think about what it starts to do to your brain. And it is, again, you're breathing. And there's something physical about you're processing the grief and the sadness and the love and all those emotions as you're physically moving and breathing. And everything is just like you're dealing with it, okay? And it's moving through your body, because the grief sits in our body. I really believe that. It sits in our lungs, and you're almost expelling it. And here we go. We finally get to the top, and I'll make this a story. Done this a bunch of times, but after hours and hours, get to the top. And what a fantastic experience, because then you have this group of kids sitting on top of a peak in Colorado. And they're
14,000 feet.
14,000 feet. How did I get here? Now I'm on a peak. Wow, life is full of spontaneous, right?
Yeah.
I would have never thought I'd be doing this a year before this, or 3 months. And here we are, and now you're really connecting with your group too. So now you're looking around on day 3 or 4, and you're going, everyone up here is my brother and sister. Like, I love these people. And I did this, and I'm sitting up there, and I feel it, and I'm like, Dad, this is a few years ago, and I'm like, Dad, this is for you. I really want to, we had hit like 400 or 500 kids had participated at that point. I love you, Dad. And all of a sudden I get this chill, like electricity through my body.
Yeah.
And this is we're on this peak, and we can see rivers and creeks and the, fields. And other peaks, and it makes it intense. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, Dad, this is for you. And all of a sudden I feel all this electricity through my body. And I can say at that moment, I felt my dad in my bones. I felt closer to him than I had ever felt. When he's not been around for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So then, we're up there, and the kids are always doing some kind of their own ceremony. And there was a time, and this came from one of the instructors, Bethany Frakes, is that there's 2 kids up there, and I know these kids, and they're on top of this mountain. I'll just call them Joe and Mike. And both of their moms had died from cancer. And they're on this peak, and with everyone, and they're just talking, and you could see that they were coordinating something. And then all of a sudden we hear both of them yell out at the top of their lungs, I love you, Mom. I miss you, Mom. And then, and then it was silence, okay? Total silence for a minute. And then Joe looks over at Mike and says, I think they heard us. And like, wow. And I can tell you, they were suffering, and they that doesn't mean that the suffering ended there, but right there on top of a mountain in Colorado together, Joe from Colorado, Mike from California, moms had died. They're up there, and they realize, yes, their moms had died, but the relationship lives on. They are connected, okay? And this is happening over and over again with this type of wilderness program mixed with challenge using Outward Bound model. And we're walking down the mountain, and this has happened to me. One of the kids, and this was a kid that was actually from Judy's house. This is another time, and he says to me, that was the most stressful, stress-relieving experience of my life.
Stressful and stress-relieving.
Yeah. Because that's this type of program. That's what it is. It is out of your comfort zone. there's a lot of tension. You get to this point where everything is wound up and you're just like this, and then, oh my gosh, and then everything's released.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I can relax now. I've just shifted. And that's happening over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we walked down. It was a great day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Wow. I think we could keep talking about this all day, and this is making me want to go on one of these.
Yeah, please do. Come out. I'll set it up.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Or maybe my kids. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, this is terrific. I think we're almost out of time here. Actually, I love hearing all these stories and how the power of something, I don't know, different, I guess, like this. I mean, it's different than going to a group, weekly or monthly or whatever, where you sit and talk. It's very experiential, and yet incorporating those important elements and that bonding with the other kids. I'm guessing these two boys you just talked about who shouted from the top of the mountain, did they not know each other before they met on this trip? Yeah.
They did not.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, this is just terrific.
And I think at the end of the day, as a person that's been involved in groups that are once a week, right, and seeing that the benefit of that's consistency and it's access, and that is such a positive thing. Yeah. And then there's the camps that we have out there, like Camp Aaron and Comfort Zone Camp, and those are wonderful because they really bring together people and normalize. The parents can be involved, and then you have a program like ours, which is more about they're all about resilience, but this is a resilience training program. We're using a survival program to basically show these kids that they have internal resources, that they can see it through, because it's common, and what we know, right, is that grief is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong journey. There's something called a grief burst. My dad can die when I'm 14 and I can have a grief burst, which means it comes back up for me. But also what we've seen with a program like Outward Bound, with this long history, is that what you learn when you're out in the wilderness, when you have this kind of novel experience, enriched environment, this challenge, this support, is that sticks with you for a long time. You never go back. You always have this idea that you can always draw on, I have the strength.
Sorry. I guess I'll have to do some editing here. This is why I always have water nearby. Usually it's not that bad. Were you in the middle of a thought, or?
Well, what I was going to say is that, just like saying that these different programs are all important, from the programs that are in the city that are accessible, like a Dougie Center or a Judy's House or a Good Grief, Roberta's House, those are important because it's that continuum and the access. And then there's the camps that are novel, also an enriched environment where you're coming together, the parents can be involved. There's a lot of normalizing and expression of grief. And then there's this type of program, which fewer people can usually do. But it is really about them discovering that strength within. This program was an ocean survival program, basically, in World War II, to help young people discover that inner strength. And we're using that so that these kids who have a lifelong journey of grief, once they come out with this, they discover that they are resilient. And that doesn't leave them. They all know that for a lifetime. They can always draw from that experience. Mm-hmm. And we get that all the time. People that were like, I had to go to Vietnam after Outward Bound, and it was Outward Bound that got me through Vietnam. Right?
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, and it's terrific and interesting too. I think that's something that's, started so long ago during World War II, as you said, and how much has stayed the same and how much has adapted for different circumstances, like, for example, adapting for the grieving program specifically, and how that still can be so powerful for so many youth. Yeah, that's just terrific. And I'm thinking, I guess it's probably that, some kids, it's good there's so many options, right? Because some kids are going to find more help with one type of program, another type of program, another type of offering or resource. And some kids maybe put together multiple different things. They do a weekly program or monthly program locally, and they do an expedition like this. And maybe the combination ends up becoming helpful.
I think so. And that's what a lot of the, our community at the National Alliance for Grieving Children, my friends there think, and New York Life has said to me. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, terrific.
coming together, all of us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, well, let me just ask you then before we wrap up here, if you could say one thing to widowed parents, what would you say to them?
I would say that get involved in peer support, because I think the challenge that I've heard most over the years that widowed parents have, and you would know best, is that when you're raising your kids and you're have any kind of challenge or something's going on with them, it gets confusing. Like, what is normal child development versus what is grief? Mm-hmm. And how, which one do I like? How do I react to this? And you also have this huge challenge of keeping the doors and opportunity open in life. But you're sitting there going, well, they got to grieve, and I don't want to be too hard on them. But then you have this place where you have to just to keep them supported and have boundaries and structure. And that gets so confusing. But to sit down with a group of parents and navigate that together, that is huge. So find places like Judy's house that we talked about, and Dougie Center up in Oregon, and all the other wonderful places like that.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I hear that all the time from listeners. It is really hard to know how to proceed and how to figure out what's a grief issue and what's a normal kid issue or a normal teenage issue. It can be really bewildering. I think I find it to be. Well,
I'm the son of a mom who had 3 boys, and she had her daughter had died, and then our father had died, and she had to take care of 3 of us. And navigate, and we were crazy, wild. And so she had to deal with that, but we're all alive and well. Yeah. And we all appreciate our mom for that. It was tough and it happened, but it's all turned into gratitude.
Yeah. Terrific. Yeah. Well, I think that is actually a great place to end. So my guest today is Jason Stout, who's the National Outreach Director for Outward Bound USA. So, Jason, where can listeners find you guys if they would like to learn more about your programs and potentially get hooked up with it?
Just get online and visit us at outwardbound.org. And check out our program. You'll find information about the grief program, information about our gap year, short courses, adult courses. And then you can also, if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, just type in Outward Bound Jason Stout. I'm sure you'll find my email address right there. And I'm happy to help you navigate our program or anything like our program.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Terrific.
Thanks, Jenny, very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jason Stout of Outward Bound USA as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com. Look for episode 53. I know it's been a busy time with the holidays just having finished, the new year getting started, and actually as I record this, it's the 21st of January, so I guess the new year has more than just started. We're almost a month into it, which is a little bit hard to believe. I've been tied up this month so far with our 4th death anniversary here, which I have to say threw me off more than I expected it to this year. I'm not sure why. I suppose I should have expected it. But anyway, that followed by a car accident in the snow last week has me feeling like I'm playing catch up here. So I'm looking forward to hopefully the coming weeks being quite a bit better. But I wanted to mention, with all the busyness, in case you missed some of the recent episodes, you may want to go back and listen to them. That's one of the nice things about a podcast. The episodes are always there and ready for you to listen to whenever you have a few minutes. I like to listen to podcasts when I'm vacuuming. If I put in earbuds, that works great. I also like to listen in the car. I like to listen while I'm walking the dogs, or just walking by myself. I also oftentimes just, listen to them cooking dinner, all kinds of things. Even if I get 5 minutes here or there, I'll listen to an episode of some podcast that I'm enjoying. And next thing you know, I'm through a whole episode. So anyway, I did some really interesting discussions. I really enjoyed talking with Claire Bidwell-Smith about anxiety and grief. I'd encourage you to take a listen to that one if you haven't already. Also talked with Iluna about Camp Aaron and other things. And the reason I mentioned Camp Aaron is that if you're thinking about checking into that for your kids this year, Even though camp isn't probably until summer or closer to summer, I think that the time varies a little bit depending on which organizations are running them, or which local organizations. This is probably the time to be reaching out and inquiring and seeing whether that might be a good fit for your kids this year. So I'd encourage you to have a listen if you might be interested in the Grief Camp, Camp Aaron. Also, last week's discussion with Meghan Simmons, terrific discussion. Love talking with her, sharing her reflections and her journey on losing her mom when she was just 4 years old. Also, the Best of 2019 episode, I had a lot of fun with that one, although I was sick, so I think I probably sound sick, but anyway, it was fun to go back and pick out some of the, what I think were some of the top episodes, or, some of the key points from some of last year's interviews, and pull out some clips of some of the things I wanted to highlight in kind of a way to summarize some of the highlights or themes that came out from 2019. So do listen to that one if you haven't had a chance yet. Coming up in the next few weeks here, lots more good things. Talking with the Dougie Center. I've already interviewed them. They're in Portland, Oregon, but they're much more than a Portland-based organization. They're a leader nationwide in this space, so I'm looking forward to sharing my interview with them with you guys. And I've just scheduled actually an episode on parenting, widowed parenting for infants. Had some listeners reach out on that recently. It's a little bit different situation. Well, as I'm sure you all know, I mean, if your kid is 1 or 11 or 17 when their parent dies, probably your experience might be very different. Some things will be the same, some things will be different, different things will be hard depending on, lots of different things, including your kid's age. So looking forward to having that discussion soon here. I think that is all for now. I did just want to ask a quick favor. If you have a moment, if you could go into iTunes, or if you listen in Google Podcasts or Spotify, Stitcher, and leave a 5-star review, that would be fantastic. It really helps people find the podcast when there's lots and lots of reviews out there. So thank you in advance for doing that. It should be pretty easy to go into the app on your phone. And if you need a link to do it in iTunes, you can go to jennylisk.com/Apple for a link to that. So thank you in advance for taking a moment to do that. And most especially, thank you so much for listening. And until next week, keep smiling.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.